Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Goeienaand, dames en heren. Goeienaand. Sanbonani. Dumelang. Absheni. Guys, I've lost count how many official languages we have in this country. Can someone help me? 11. I had the privilege this afternoon to meet with some of the students on campus. And as I got here, I walked around the campus, a very beautiful campus, and it reminded me, DVC, of my younger days when I was a student. I was very fascinated having the discussions with the students because I thought that, in order to get the pulse of the university, the best people to talk to would be the students. And those of you, and I see amongst the audience, thank you for making the time to hang out with me for about a couple of hours and for sharing what you've shared with me. What was interesting is that the issues, because I was interested to understand in terms of what the students are currently talking about. And what kind of activism, because as a youngster and as a student, I was an activist as well. I was one of those rebel rousers, and I hope that, now that I've grown older, that I was responsible in terms of how I did that, which I think places like these need to be nurturing of different ideas, different thoughts. If one looks at what the role of universities should be, but it needs to be done, in my view, in a constructive way. The reason why I was trying to use the 11 official languages to see in terms of how we all can communicate here, because one of the things which came out talking to the students was that one of the burning issues on campus at the moment is language, which I found very interesting that in 2015, almost 21 years after our democracy, that we're still grappling with issues of language on this campus. But that's the issue that I was told is a burning issue. I thought that I was going to be told that there's going to be a statue somewhere that needs to be taken down. And I was asked my opinion in terms of what, I think about the statue issue, and more particularly as a Rhodes Scholar. And I offered to some of them, maybe I should return the check back to Cecil John Rhodes, but he's not around, guys, so I can't give him back his money. Jokes aside, the way I've dealt with that issue was that, one of the most disturbing things for me is how we handle some of our issues, like the statue issue. So I need to just deal with it and get it out of the way before I get into, my, more formal remarks. It's easy to move statues. You can move the statue. You can put another statue up there. But once the statue is moved, I wonder whether that campus would be more transformed than it was before the statue was moved. But maybe if it encourages and fosters debate, maybe, just maybe, we should welcome it, but I'm a critic of actions like those. A special welcome to the Van Zyl Slabbert family. Jane, thank you very much. Tanya and Roy. Welcome to the sponsors, to the friends, particularly to the students. Leslie, thank you very much for allowing yourself to be persuaded by Jane to invite me to give the fourth Frederik Van Zyl Slabbert Memorial Lecture. When I spoke to you in Joburg, he told me that he's not quite sure, but you've kind of indicated. So thank you for the for the persuasion. And Jane, thank you very much for the confidence that you have shown in me and for believing that I would be a worthy speaker for this evening. When you first broached the idea of me being invited to give this talk more than a year ago, I said, yes, of course. It's very nice to be invited. But at the time, I was thinking that it's far away, the day would never come. The interesting thing with time is that, the day does arrive, So here we are, and the day has finally arrived. And it is my pleasure to be here and be talking to you this evening. But before I delve more into my thoughts, I thought it would be important that I reflect on who Dr. Van Zyl Slabbert was. A professor of sociology, member of parliament, leader of the Progressive Federal Party, co-founder of IDASA, political consultant, research fellow, founder of Kula, a black investment trust, leader of a team investigating a new electoral system for South Africa in 2002, and chancellor of this fine institution. With all these accolades and social involvement, what stands out for me when I look deeper is that his life was about courage and active citizenship. And he showed that throughout his life. In one of his writings during May of 1992, he stated that his fear was not that there wouldn't be eventual consensus on the principle of a new democratic constitution for South Africa. What was of far greater concern for him was that the expectations that people had of what a democracy can deliver would be pretty tough and close not to being delivered. That observation has come home to roost, as most of the promises of what the new dispensation would deliver have not materialized. The South Africa of 1994 and the South Africa of 2015 points out that the dream that was promised and the hopes that were raised has not really been met. And if anything, it seems that the situation is getting worse. Sue and Mickey Smirin, who are my neighbors, they're sitting up front here. They're my adopted parents, by the way, because I don't have parents. So Sue and Mickey, where are you? Can you stand up? And guys, just say hi to my folks. Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. They seem to be embarrassed to be my parents. How could you, Mickey? Okay, no, thank you. That assurance is really helpful. We live together in Joburg. We're neighbors. We live in this little cul-de-sac. There's a lot of unemployed people there. So I have to work for them and keep them going. These two knew Mr. Van Zyl very well. I think they're a family friend, and that's how I met Jane. The other day I was sitting with them as I was kind of scratching my head in terms of what I should be talking about, this evening. And they threw a lot of anecdotes, sharing some of their memories, of Van, as they fondly, call him. They said to me that he strongly believed that as a young democracy, we had to go through the bad times before we get to the good times. I guess what he didn't tell them at the time is how bad things would get before they got better. "105 years ago, Theodore Roosevelt gave a speech at the Sorbonne University in France entitled Citizen in the Republic. The University of Stellenbosch, in its beautiful surroundings and its grand buildings, it's in many ways to South Africa what the Sorbonne is to France. In addressing you today, let me appropriate words from that speech and talk of an august body in this Institute of Learning. Leaders, both good and bad, who shaped this country are alumni of this institution. From D.F. Malan and Verwoerd, who gave us apartheid, to Van Zyl Slabbert, who played a major role in leading us out of it, and countless other prominent individuals who made contributions in politics, architecture, engineering, the sciences, academia, business, and many other fields. Stellenbosch University is one of the finest institutions in our countries today, and it has produced great leaders. That day, when Roosevelt was addressing France at the Sorbonne, he was addressing the French elite and the privileged. And he was addressing its future leaders. I believe that I'm doing likewise today, being in a very fine institution. One of the things I touched upon as I was talking to students this morning is that how privileged they are to have the opportunity to be at this fine institution. All that they have to worry about, and I asked some of them in terms of what they worry about, is to explore the boundaries, is to study, is to look at kind of like different ways of doing things. By their nature, institutions such as this, of higher learning, they produce people of privilege. Leslie, you were talking about our president saying, we're clever people. And sometimes he talks about kind of like, the clever blacks, which are saying things which, they shouldn't be, saying. The future of South Africa will undoubtedly, in the long run, be determined by you and others like you from institutions such as this. One of the burdens, however, of such institutions, other than producing well-educated and well-rounded individuals, is to produce future leaders and to be relevant to the societal issues of our time. I stand before you today as a graduate of Wesleyan University, a liberal arts college in the United States. I'm a Rhodes Scholar, a successful businessman, a leader in many civil society organizations, such as the Open Society Foundation of South Africa, which Van Zyl Slabbert was the founding chairman. I see Mark Savage is amongst us as well today, who was the first executive director of the Open Society Foundation in South Africa, and Fatima Hassan, who's currently working with me as the executive director / CEO of that organization. Leslie has also mentioned my pride in leadership and the organizations that I started in this area. The Africa Leadership Initiative is an NGO whose aim is to develop and prepare the next generation of African leaders to move from success to significance. Based on what I have achieved, I guess I can safely say that, I'm part of the privilege of people like those of you who are in this institution. This, however, is not my whole story. From time to time, and when this is said, I hope that is said in jest. My wife, who's sitting here with my parents, refers to me as a street urchin. And the reason why she refers to me as a street urchin is because my upbringing was like that of most Black South African children who were raised under apartheid. I was raised by my grandmother, my mother having given birth to me at the age of 15. As was typical in such situation, my grandmother didn't just raise me, but a number of other cousins as well. As you can imagine, there was very little resources to go around for all of us. At the age of 12, I left my grandmother's house to fend for myself. I tended people's gardens on weekends whilst going to school during the week, just to survive. You may be asking yourself, why am I telling you this? The point that I'm trying to make is simple. The circumstances of one's birth should not be the determinant of where one ends up. I'm not defined by my circumstance, nor should anyone be. Through the generosity of a few special people who saw something in me, I was able to secure a route out of poverty through education. I owe these men a specific debt of gratitude, but also a more general recognition of the value one can have in positively transforming the lives of others. Next Monday is Freedom Day. As is customary, there will be celebrations and events across the country for our 21 years of democracy. I always wondered, though, what an average South African has to celebrate on Freedom Day. Most of us in this room have a lot to be grateful for and therefore have reason to celebrate. Whether we will celebrate or not on the 27th is not the point. The point, however, is that the country that we live in today is far better for all of us than our country of yesterday. Whether we celebrate or not, it is incumbent on all of us to contribute to the new struggle that our country finds itself in. That is a struggle against inequality, poverty, racism, sexism, and all the other bad things that are currently crippling our country. It is not a secret that our young democracy is in a serious crisis of legitimacy. A dream of a new dawn that shone so brightly in 1994 is in a serious danger of being extinct. Political freedom has not led to economic freedom for the majority of our countrymen and women. For a democracy to survive, it needs to be legitimate. Legitimacy requires the citizenry to believe that they have a fair chance of lifting themselves out of the circumstances they find themselves in. Last year, in his lecture, Jay Naidu spoke of a country that is on the ropes, fighting for survival. A year later, I believe we are a country on the floor, gasping for air. We see the hopelessness of people who don't see a future for themselves anymore, manifesting as xenophobia, the vandalism of statues, or daily service delivery protest that results at times in people burning down their own libraries and community clinics. This represents a systemic failure on the part of an incompetency that exists in most of our state institutions. It would be very easy for me to regurgitate all the troubles we find ourselves in and to point a finger of who is to blame. I really don't believe that blaming achieves anything. Given where we find ourselves, whether on the ropes or the floor or whatever your diagnosis may be, one thing I'm sure we will all agree on is that all is not well with our beautiful country. On the whole, those of us who are privileged have largely chosen to stay on the sidelines, complain and pass judgments about all that's going wrong. We lament that fault lies elsewhere, or that the people have voted this government in, and that the problems we have are not of our making. Where is the courage to step into the arena? What are we afraid of? We no longer live in a country where standing up for what you believe in will lead you to being beaten to death in a police cell. In today's South Africa, a cartoonist can draw a shower head on the president's head and sleep peaceful at night. It used to be that our best and brightest were drawn to civic-minded endeavors, even at great personal risk to themselves. But now, it seems that many have withdrawn to less risky lives in the private sector. Why, when it is easier to be brave, are we seeing so much less courage? What I'm proposing is a different self-narrative for the privileged. In the face of a country where a large majority of its citizens see no future for themselves, where our Constitution and its institutions are being compromised, and where many of our leaders, both in government and in private sector, appear to behave in a self-interested and callous manner, given this state of affairs, I can only see three options open to us. We can choose to believe that we are okay and continue to build our walls even higher, continue to educate our children in private schools, use private health care, use private security, and pray hard that their world won't spill into ours. Another option is that we can choose to leave. We can go to Australia. We can go to the United Kingdom or wherever and try to forget what we've left behind. We can, and we've seen it happen. But increasingly, the world over, it's not a beautiful place. We see it on a daily basis. Or thirdly, we can choose to get into the arena and get our faces dirty. For those of us raised under this African sky and who have the privileges that have placed us in our current position, with Freedom Day approaching, I believe only the third option is a legitimate option. We must get into the arena. We've got a beautiful country. If we're not jealous about it, it will be destroyed in front of our eyes. And if it does get destroyed, we would have let it to be destroyed. The leaders that governs us today have been elected in those positions. We live in a democracy. One thing I can say with certainty, even though I don't like the outcome, is that on the whole, the 4 elections that we've had as a young democracy, I don't think that we had kind of like situation of ballot boxes being stuffed and the elections not being free and fair. They've been free and fair. And democracy gives you whatever it gives us. And if you don't like it, and I don't like, I've gone public, I don't like it, we need to do something about it. The question we need to ask ourselves then, if we believe that we need to get into the arena, what does it mean to do that? What does it mean? As I said before, it's easy to complain and to blame and to point the finger. Those people there, they have to sort it out. It's the government. You're right, I'm sure even Zuma is a bit tired, The other day, a couple of weeks ago, he said, South Africans, even if one falls off the chair, they're going to say, is that bloody Zuma that I fell off the chair. Let's talk about what you can do as a citizen of the Republic. Mandela once said that one of the most difficult things, I quote, one of the most difficult things is not to change society, but to change yourself. As citizens, Mandela wanted us to change the way in which we engage with our country. Pearls of wisdom that are underscored by Gandhi's famous charge for us to be, I quote, be the change that we want to see in the world. I believe that a virtuous and active citizenry will be one of the key solutions to our country's problems. You are all uniquely placed to act, but in order to be successful, you need to bear in mind at least some of the following. You cannot act alone. Understand the concept of Ubuntu. Ubuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. A person is a person through other people. We need to understand that and embrace that. We are because of the others. For some reason, we have managed to find the differences in each other. Therefore, if we don't believe that we are each other's keepers, I don't know where we're going to start. But if you decide that you're going to act, let's understand that. You can't do it alone. When you decide to get into the arena, recognize that this will require a commitment of your time for the rest of your life. Be mindful that whatever you choose to do, you must include time to rejuvenate, reflect, and redesign, because it's hard. Pick an area that speaks to your passion and your skills and your interest. Accumulate small victories whilst also tackling a big, hairy, audacious goal. Recognize that all of this will require a courage because there will be those that will actively oppose and criticize you. But most importantly, as difficult as it might be, find it within yourself to love your country. Anything done out of love is likely to succeed. It is very easy for me to reflect and suggest what other people must do. What about me? Am I the man in the arena? Am I living up to what is expected of me? Given the opportunities with which I have been presented with, I always ask myself whether I'm doing enough. Let me offer a modest but rapidly growing example from my own life that illustrate my own contribution. As it has already been indicated, I'm the founder of the Africa Leadership Initiative, an organization that focuses on developing the next generation of values-based, community-spirited African leaders. One of the requirements from the fellows who join the fellowship is to initiate and execute a community project. These initiatives always encourage me and convince me that as citizens we can make a difference in so many ways if we try. An example is a feeding scheme initiated by a couple of fellows. This project started in one of the provinces in the Northwest, but has since rolled out nationally, where the fellows involved are assisting the National School Nutrition Program in feeding more than 6 million school children daily. As an active citizen, Gary Campbell and his team have managed to assist the government instead of just complaining about what the government is doing wrong. Another example is Teach South Africa, a project that Ali Fellows, Mutumang Diaho, and Futim Toba launched in 2005. After years of researching educational initiatives around the world, they decided to be part of the solution by placing highly skilled and motivated recent university graduates as Teach ambassadors in classrooms across the country, particularly in rural areas. This initiative has not only benefited the learners and helped to narrow the achievement gap that persists in our country, but it is also equipping a generation of learners to be better prepared for university and the workplace. To date, nearly 300 ambassadors have completed the 2-year program, and another 100 are currently in the program in Gauteng, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and the Free State. My involvement with Ali has given me the opportunity to see the value of effective citizenry. Not everything has worked, and everything has faced challenges. It has taken and continued to take valuable time away from my family and from my business. The mundane act of raising funding can seem insurmountable at times. Sometimes fellows can sign up for the Ali Pledge and project and not end up initiating it. My point is, it is not easy path once you step into the arena. If I look at the work that the Open Society Foundation in South Africa supports in its mandate of fostering a tolerant society, I'm always reminded of how important courage is. The Free State chairperson of the Treatment Action Campaign, Sello Mokalipi, was subjected to death threats and dismissed from his job for speaking out against the provincial government and its poor performance on drug shortages. There are also numerous whistleblowers who took great risk exposing corruption or cartels that came from all walks of life, such as Imran Makadam, a small shop owner who exposed the bread cartel, or Andrew Feinstein, an ANC member of parliament who was part of the ongoing saga on the arms deal. Mandela taught us that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Given the benefits that life has given me along the way, and given the inequalities that exist today, I'm tormented by my own lack of courage, and I have to dig deep into my own soul in search of finding a higher purpose within me. I'm inviting you to join me on this journey. For most of us, South Africa is the only country that we have. If we fail, let's fail courageously. Let me end where I started, with the words of Theodore Roosevelt. I quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives violently, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fail while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." God bless you, and God bless South Africa. Thank you.